Take a look at the testimonials on screen. This is the best console settings video for Black Ops 6. It is worth every second. We cover everything from in-game settings to monitor and TV settings and even the Xbox and PlayStation dashboard settings, because all of those lay the foundation for your actual in-game performance. So if you want the best movement, the strongest aim assist, and the most performance, follow this step by step. And if you want to stay up to date on all Black Ops 6 guides, tips, tricks, and gameplay, make sure to subscribe here with notifications on so you find out before your opponents, so you can get the most out of your Black Ops 6 experience. Without further ado, let's get into the best settings. Okay, let's get into our optimized in-game settings. Now, an important note, I will update the pinned comment down below if I make any changes to what I tell you in this video. Starting with controller settings, I have my default button layout. I have changed my stick sensitivity to 6.6. Everything else here is set to off. Controller vibration is set to off. And then make sure you change your dead zones. This is one of the things that people don't realize. It affects your aim assist and your aim so much. I have my left stick set to 2, and I have my left stick max set to 80. That basically just makes it to where when I press my left stick, it'll activate tac sprint faster. More on that here in a moment. My right stick I have brought down to 3. Some people like to bring it all the way down to 0, so that way their stick is always drifting just a little bit. So that way they're always getting rotational aim assist. I personally hate that. I don't like stick drift at all. It drives me insane. So I have mine set to 3. Basically, you're going to keep moving yours up until your stick stops moving. So if I bring mine all the way down to like 1, you will see my stick starts to slowly drift. So you can bring it up to whatever you feel comfortable. I personally just bring it up to the absolute minimum that it's either barely moving or not moving at all. You see, I set it to 3, and now I'm like not seeing it move at all. So that's how you can adjust your dead zone to make sure your stick isn't drifting. Now, from there, dead zones are set. Your trigger dead zones, kind of up to you. I use a scuff, so my triggers are actually digital. So they are like little mouse clicks. So I don't really have to worry about the dead zone, but make sure to set it lower or higher depending on whether or not you're getting desk pops where you're shooting accidentally. Okay, now listen, I take my gaming and content very seriously, but some people on the internet take things way too far, which is why I protect myself with DeleteMe. They're the sponsor of today's video, but I've actually been using their service for years out of my own pocket, and they just recently reached out to partner up. So an unfortunate reality of today's world is people are often targeting you with very simple information for stalking, doxing, swatting, financial crimes, and it's all made possible by what are called data brokers. They're basically making loads of money off of selling your information, but DeleteMe can help. Here's a look at my profile on DeleteMe, and you'll see they have reviewed tens of thousands of listings, and they're constantly scanning for my address, my personal information, anything that can be used to harm me, and they remove those listings for me. You get these constant updates that I've been getting since 2022 that go through and tell me all of these sites that used to have my information that no longer have my information. If you're interested in checking out DeleteMe, you can go down to the link down in the pinned comment or the description, and you can use joindeleteme.com/Isaac and get 20% off US consumer plans. A huge shout out to them for sponsoring today's video. Moving over to aiming, make sure you click show more because that's going to bring up a very important number, which is the ADS sensitivity multiplier. You often hear people say they play 6.8. The 0.8 is the ADS sensitivity multiplier, and I bring mine to 0.8. That basically makes it to where I can aim fast as I'm moving around, but then when I'm aiming down sight, it slows it down by 80% to kind of refine your aim down sight aiming. Aiming advanced settings, I don't have any of my look inverted. ADS sensitivity transition timing, right now I have mine set to instant. I believe by default, it is set to gradual. There was an issue in the beta where you had to set it to gradual, but typically you should be used to it being set to instant. Aim response curve, make sure you have, or at least me personally, make sure you set it to dynamic. That's going to allow you to move fast while you're not aimed down sight, but also make some more finer adjustments as you need as well. And then I have that set to 1. I do not have any custom sensitivities per zoom, but this is where you would change that. Target aim assist, you definitely want to make sure you have that on. There are no different aim assists like Precision or Black Ops in this game. There is only aim assist on or off. For movement, massive one right here. We want tactical sprint assist set to on, and we want it set to 0. Otherwise, your game will feel horrible. When I think by default, it has it set to 400, and that makes it to where as you sprint around the map, you will see, you're going to see me sprint and then full sprint. Sprint and then full sprint. You'll see sprint, full sprint. Sprint, full sprint. And it makes, oh my God, it's so awkward. I don't know why they did that by default. Make sure if yours is not, we have tactical sprint assist on, and we set that all the way to 0. So that way, the second that we press forward, we are the full sprint animation, every single time. And it even allows us to do some pretty mean shouldering. Like if we were trying to shoot someone on the other end of this, we can throw some really fast, disgusting shoulders, okay? So make sure that is set to 0. From there, I have side sprint assist on and back sprint assist on because we want to be able to sprint immediately in every direction that we're moving. Mantle assist, I have turned off. I hate auto mantle no matter what game I'm playing, because if I'm jumping and I'm trying to do like a fadeaway and then all of a sudden I grab onto a wall and it gets me killed, I'll lose my mind. So I have mantle assist turned off. I will spam jump as I need to. I don't want the game helping me out. For corner slice, we have that set to off. If you're not familiar with what corner slicing is, that's when you walk up to a wall or a corner and your gun will turn sideways and kind of make you feel a little bit more tactical as if you were approaching it in real life. Now, from my understanding, this is only a client-side interaction. What happens on your enemy's POV will be the same regardless of whether or not you have that on or off. I'm going to verify that through some more testing, but in general, I just don't want any additional movement as I'm moving across the map. I think just being able to walk around and everything be in the same spot is just more consistent for the eye, as opposed to that starting to kind of twist and turn on me as I'm moving through the map unexpectedly. Once again, feel free to change that as you see fit, but for me, I don't want my gun moving around. It's just a variable that I'm not used to. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep that off, especially if it doesn't change anything on the enemy's POV, then I'm just gonna have it off on mine just for consistency. For slide dive behavior, I have this set to hybrid, okay? A lot of people have been rocking slide only for a long time, and I get it, and it makes a lot of sense for me. But now that we're able to dive and shoot at the same time, I feel like now more than ever, you got to get used to diving using hybrid. Now, you can still use things like the tap to slide and then hold the dive. I just think that's a little bit clunky. I think if you can get used to hybrid, do it. Otherwise, you can use tap to slide and you can actually change now the delay based on the actual activation. And that might be something you can try out if you can't get your brain used to hybrid. What hybrid is when you tap, you have an instant, super fast slide. But in order to dive, you need to hold sprint, so hold left joystick, left L3 if you're on PlayStation, and then click your dive button, and now you will dive, or click your slide button. So if you're not holding sprint, you slide. If you're holding sprint, you dive. It's going to take a while to rewire your brain, but I really think it's worth it, especially now that we can dive and shoot in this game, which will often be a mechanic that we use, especially inside of Warzone, jumping off of rooftops and taking people out. Moving on from there, I have automatic airborne mantle set to off, sprint restore is set to on, slide maintain sprint set to on, and parachute automatic behavior is set to off. That'll be more of a Warzone setting. Mantle cancels reload. This really doesn't matter because this is whether or not we have mantle assist turned on or off up top. And since we have mantle assist off, it doesn't matter. But basically, it will say if you are using mantle assist, that if you were to have this on, it can automatically cancel a reload if it mantles for you. But since we're not using mantle assist, and I think all that interrupt is going to get you killed, just keep it off. And we have mantle assist turned off up here anyways. For movement advanced settings, we're going to set sprint tactical behavior set to toggle. Auto move forward is off. Grounded mantle is off. If you do like grounded mantle, it's a bit more of an advanced setting. It can get you killed with a little bit of auto mantle, but it also can allow you to mantle extremely fast in some niche scenarios. That's totally up to you. I think the average player should have it off, but some more high-speed players like it on. Tactical sprint activation, I have set to single tap run. Plunging underwater, I've set to free, and sprinting door bash, I have set to on. Vehicle advanced settings, I have everything just kind of set to how you see here. I generally like a no camera recenter. I just have that off because I'll just do it myself. Everything else is set to basically default here, but you're not doing much vehicle gameplay in this game. For combat, I have aim down sight behavior set to hold, weapon mount activation set to ADS plus melee, dedicated weapon activation is hold melee. So basically that is, if you hold R3 in this game, you pull out your knife, and with your knife out in your hands, you get unlimited tactical sprint. So that's definitely something. It's kind of like a little pro tip. Start every single round. When you guys are sitting here and the timer's going off, hold R3, you pull out your knife, and that's going to allow you to get to that starting position faster, and then you can pull out your gun and start your game. But that's just a little pro tip. If you hold your melee button, it will pull out your dedicated melee weapon, and that's definitely something you need to build into your gameplay. Little pro tip, make sure you drop a like. Okay, from there, we're going to have armor plate set to apply all, C4 detonation all at once, equipment behavior is set to hold, manual fire behavior is set to press. You can set it to hold, and what that will do is if you hold it will automatically shoot for you. But it's important to note that it does not max out the fire rate. If you press, you can fire faster. Just something to be aware of there. So I have mine set to press. From there, combat advanced settings, make sure to change a couple of these. Most specifically, weapon mount exit, I have mine set to instant because I don't want any delay for when I'm getting off of a mounted object. I have mine set to prioritize reload. So that's going to make it to where if I tap, I can reload. If I tap, I can open a door. But if I ever have both at the same time, if I tap, it will focus on the reload. When I play Warzone, I have prioritize interact, but for multiplayer, I like prioritize reload. Sprint cancels reload, I have on. Depleted ammo weapon switch, I have off. And then I changed mine to prioritize body shield. So if you're sneaking up behind someone and you go to grab onto them, it will prioritize putting them in a body shield. And then you can do the finishing move after. But I would hate to try to put someone in a finishing move and then I'm trying to put them in a body shield and then it finishes them, but I much rather would put them in a body shield just because I think that's a toxic mechanic. For the overlay stuff, I don't have any changes here. Let's go ahead and get into the graphics settings. For 120 hertz, we're gonna make sure we have this on if you can. Now, you need to be back out into the main menu in order to changes. So if you're in the firing range like I am right now, you'll have to back out, put it to on, and then you can go in and change some more settings. If you're unable to turn it on and you're not sure why, make sure to check both my monitor settings and my Xbox or PS5 settings that I'll mention towards the end of the video. Because if you have the wrong cable, the wrong monitor settings, the wrong console settings, you should be able to turn this on, but you aren't. So make sure you follow through with all those settings at the end of the video. For gamma and brightness, I have mine set to 55. It brings up some of those dark shadows. For the eco mode preset, it's set to efficiency. I have mine turned to off. For quality, I have all of the blur turned off. So world motion blur, weapon motion blur, and depth of field, I have all of that turned off. Fidelity FX cast, which will make the game a little bit sharper, I have that turned to on and set to 90. For on-demand texture streaming, I have set to minimal and auto. I haven't found a lot of substantial evidence to point to one direction or another on this, but in general, I'm gonna err towards the side of not messing with my bandwidth and my internet connection of on-demand texture streaming, so I have that set to minimal. For view, I have the motion reduction preset turned to off, but we will adjust all that manually. We have FOV turned to 120, ADS field of view set to affected, weapon field of view is wide, third person field of view is 90, vehicle field of view is wide. We have the least amount of camera movement possible. The inverted flashbang is set to off. Let's go ahead and move over to the audio settings. For the master game volume, I have it set to 100. The gameplay music volume, I like the gameplay music right now just because it sounds cool. I'll probably get sick of it and I'll turn it down to 0 here in a little bit. But right now I have it set to 30. Dialogue volume, I have set to 70. Effects, we want at 100 so we can hear everything going on. And then the music, once again, that's all personal preference. You can set that to 0 as you see fit. Turn on enhanced headphone mode, at least for now. I'm gonna come out with a audio specific video actually covering some things here I'll mention in a moment. But right now, people thought this was a really big controversy, like this was a massive pay to win thing. It is free for everyone. Turn on advanced headphone mode. If you want, there is something called immersive audio where you can have a scan of your head and it's going to make you the audio specific based off of the size of your head and the shape of your ear. I'll let you know if that's even remotely worth it. Some people think it might be pay to win. They made a generic, like, default setting, which is the universal setting. Basically, they said, here is the most common ear shape, most common head size, and here is the personalized or the generic profile. So what this is supposed to do is make directional audio more accurate. And from what I've played, moving around, I like the sound of enhanced headphone mode. But for now, try it on or off. Right now, it doesn't seem like, from what I've heard and all my research of it, doing this whole immersive game pack is worth the subscription. So don't even worry about it until I tell you otherwise. And even then, I wouldn't want you to do pay to win crap. Just enjoy the game, turn on enhanced headphone mode, and don't worry about the rest of it. Audio mix, I'm in between headphones and Sucker Punch. I like Sucker Punch a little bit more right now. It has the tightest dynamic range, so it's gonna bring up the quietest sounds, and it's also going to clamp down the loudest sounds, but you'll hear, I can hear my footsteps pretty well. But when I shoot my gun, it still sounds powerful, right? Compare that to what I traditionally use, which is headphones, and I can still hear my footsteps, but the gunshots sound a little more tinny. Something about that high frequency just doesn't really do it for me. I'm not 100% sold on it, but right now I'm leaning towards Sucker Punch. I know it might only sound a little bit different, but for me, I really like the sound of Sucker Punch. Mono audio definitely have turned off. Up to you whether or not you want any of this on. I will actually make a dedicated video for audio here in a bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to isolate the frequencies of footsteps and boost those. And then I'm going to try to clamp down some of the low rumbles of like airstrikes that can muffle footstep audios, or the really tinny high pitch stuff, bringing that down. It's basically like the Artist War tune that people are known for on PC, but you can actually get a little bit of it on console, which is pretty cool. So I'm really glad they brought that in. It's meant for more of like an accessibility thing, but it can be used to enhance our gameplay as well. So make sure to be subscribed to get notifications on that, so you can hopefully hear a little bit more footsteps. I have reduced tinnitus sound turned to on. That gets rid of that high pitch ringing. And then voice chat, I have set to 25. I want to have all my voice chat on, especially the body shield chat. And you can set all these off of your personal mic settings. From there, we're going to go into interface. We're going to have menu prompts set to automatic. Right now, I have my gameplay tips turned on, just in case there's any new mechanics I want to hear about, but I'll have the rest of it turned off. Server latency, packet loss, connection meters all turned on. You can see that up in the top left-hand corner of my screen. Subtitles, totally up to you whether or not you want them, but I do change my color customization. I have all this set to default, but I go down to the color filter, I set filter 2, and I set my color filter target to world. That's going to make it to where the entire world is a little bit brighter. If you want, you could also set it to the interface as well, and that will make the interface brighter. Some people like that, some people don't. I personally don't mind either way, but it makes the game a little brighter, a little more vibrant. And then I also do have a little filter on my OBS to make it really pop. If you want that same effect, I've done that on my monitor, and on my monitor, I've upped my saturation, and I've also upped my black levels, which help to kind of bring out the shadows. So what you're seeing on the screen is very similar to what I'm seeing on my monitor, but I'm adding a filter to my OBS. And then on my monitor, I'm upping the saturation and I'm upping the black level. You can do the exact same thing on your TV as well. So once again, totally up to you whether or not you have it set to world, interface, or both. I personally like mine set to either both or world. I definitely like it on the world because I like a little more pop of color, and I have the intensities set to 100. The gameplay HUD, I have my minimap shape set to square, and I have rotation turned on, and I have the compass type turned to horizontal. By default, it's set to minimap, and you can just see that little bit of numbers on the top left-hand corner of your screen where it shows the minimap numbers. I don't like that. I like to have it big and bold, so I throw it up on horizontal, and now it's up at the top of my screen, and I can see that whole compass rows up there. For there, everything else I have set to defaults. Crosshairs I have set to on. If you want the center dot larger, you can set it larger as you see fit. From there, everything else is basically by default. They do have something cool though, where you can actually change the opacity of some things in your feed. Treyarch is known for the metals popping up in your feed, and if you feel like that's too obnoxious or it's blocking your vision, you can actually change the opacity of these individual ones to make it to where you don't ever have key information blocked, which I think is a really cool feature. And with that, we're all set up on the in-game settings, but do not skip the console-specific settings, because we not only cover PlayStation, Xbox, we also cover monitor and TV, and even some HDMI cable-related problems that a lot of people haven't realized is majorly affecting their in-game performance. So without further ado, let's get into the PlayStation-specific settings. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up into the settings menu, we're going to scroll all the way down to screen and video, and then we're going to double check to make sure our current video output is matching what we expect to see. Now, I'm not loaded into Black Ops 6 right now, but what I would typically expect to see is 3840 by 2160, variable refresh rate, and then variable refresh rate all the way up to 120 hertz. I don't have the game loaded up right now, so it's not kicking in that 120 hertz mode. Once you launch the game and enable 120 hertz, it will show that. Okay, if it's not showing that, we need to double check we've matched the settings that we need. Okay, so we're going to go to resolution, and you're going to set as you see fit. I'm using a 4K monitor, so I'll have 2160p. If you want 1440p or 2160p, you might have to do test 1440p output, which will cause the screen to flash a few times. You'll have to confirm that you can see everything correctly, and then you will put that on. Variable refresh rate we're going to have on because it's going to kind of account for the fact that not always can a console reach the full 120 hertz. So if your monitor or TV supports it, it will allow that refresh rate to go down to 110 or 100, which will help some of that more jittery, jarring, especially screen tearing that can happen. Now, 120 hertz make sure you have that enabled. Now, if you're not sure whether or not you have this enabled, go look up the specific model number of your TV or your monitor and look up a dedicated guide for that monitor specific to gaming. Okay, it will tell you what the best settings should be. It'll more than likely have low latency or gaming modes that will reduce input delay. Because oftentimes with these default modes, whether it's the cinema modes or the normal mode, it will use AI upscaling to make the content on your screen appear sharper or more vibrant. And we don't want that. We want that system giving us that information as fast as possible with no extra upscaling or whatever it may be. So go through, find your specific monitor, find a guide for gaming, and then, like we mentioned earlier in the interface settings, you can change things like the black levels, the shadow levels, the saturation to get your fit. But at the very least, make sure if your TV or monitor supports it, we get the 120 hertz output we paid for. On top of that, if you are not seeing the 120 hertz output supported, we know the PlayStation supports it, and we know your monitor or TV supports it, make sure you are using the correct cable. If you have a cheap HDMI plugged into your monitor or your TV, it will not support 120 hertz. You need to be using an HDMI 2.1. The same thing goes for the actual TV or monitor itself. Sometimes only one port on the TV supports HDMI 2.1. It might have a 120 hertz port, and then the rest of them are 60 hertz ports. So make sure you follow the guide, you put the correct HDMI 2.1 into the correct port, and then we'll have all of the settings that we should see here. And let's move on from there. Okay, 120 hertz, auto low latency mode, video transfer rate. More than likely, you should be fine setting this to automatic, but you will see you might have to select -2 or -1, which would limit our ability to set things like 4K 120 hertz because the HDMI does not have the throughput. So once again, that all goes back to make sure we're using the right cable. You should be able to, if you have everything set up hardware-wise with your monitor and your correct ports, to put it on automatic. HDR I have turned off, that's totally personal preference, and then everything else I have set to automatic. Now, if your screen is flickering or flashing black and turning off, you might need to double check some of your hardware settings, but once everything is set correctly, you can go all the way up to the top and you should verify that you have everything set as you see fit. From there, we're gonna back out and go all the way down to save data in game app settings. We're gonna go to game presets and we're gonna make sure the game is set to performance mode because we want the highest frame rate and the lowest input delay. If you're going to play some sort of cinematic game, go ahead and turn this down to resolution mode. Sometimes you can trust the game default to do the right thing, but me personally, I'm going to put it in performance mode so I know for a fact I'm getting the highest frame rate and the lowest input delay for my FPS gaming. From there, you can go on to accessories, you can go into general, and if you want, and it might just be a placebo thing, but some people have said the controller feels more responsive if you turn off Bluetooth, basically forcing it to where the controller has to communicate via the wired method. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's something to try out if you want to and you're already set up to use a USB cable. Just an option to totally try it out. But ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up my PlayStation settings for the video. We'll go on to Xbox after this, but if you're heading out right now, do me a favor, drop a like on this video because I spent a lot of time. I could be grinding out my weapon camos right now. I think this helps out the community so much. So many of these settings, as I've seen from reviews in the past, have been totally messed up, ruining people's gameplay experience, and I really hope this helps out, okay? Make sure to drop a like if it did, subscribe for even more, and turn those notifications on so you can find out about all the best settings, guns, and guides for all things Black Ops 6 and beyond. But without further ado, let's get into the Xbox settings. So for that, you're gonna go up to the top of your dashboard, you're gonna go to settings, and then we're gonna go into TV and display options. Now, before we do this, a very important disclaimer. One, make sure your TV is set on game mode. Okay, we mentioned this over on the PlayStation setting. Make sure it's set to game mode because that will allow auto low latency mode to kick in, which means it won't be doing any upscaling. It won't be doing anything to clean up the picture. It's just going to give you that raw picture as fast as it possibly can for the lowest possible input latency. From there, we mentioned in the past, we can do things like up our saturation, or we can up our brightness or our black levels to help bring up those shadows. But most importantly, make sure you're using an HDMI 2.1 cable. If you're using a cable that's maybe you brought out of a closet or you bought online, so it's a longer cable to reach your monitor or TV, it might not be HDMI 2.1. And if it's not, that means you're not going to be able to get the 120 hertz on 4K or the 144 hertz over on 1440p. Make sure you're using an HDMI 2.1. Okay, so you're going to go into your display options, go into settings, go into display options, And the way you can really tell is go into your 4K TV details. You can look and it'll tell you what is supported. So it says my TV supports 4K Ultra HD at 120 Hertz. Now, if yours doesn't display that, but you know your TV or monitor supports that resolution, that's simply telling you that that HDMI cable that you're using is not supportive, not necessarily that your TV isn't supporting it. So if it's not showing up how it should, make sure either one, you're using an HDMI 2.1 cable, and if you are using an HDMI 2.1 cable, make sure that cable is plugged into the correct port on your TV, because oftentimes only one port on the TV will support 4K 120, but the rest only support 4K 60. So double check all that, make sure it applies here correctly, and then we can go and start changing some settings. So then from there, I'm gonna set to 4K Ultra HD because my monitor is 4K. And then I'm gonna change my refresh rate up to 120 Hertz. From there, we're gonna go down into device control. And if you want, you can turn on HDMI CEC, which basically allows consumer electronics control where the TV can control the Xbox, they can turn each other on, etc. I don't have that turned on for my use case, but what is important to change is go over to video modes. Make sure you have all of these ticked off that you possibly can tick off, except for a couple, okay? So I have 50 Hertz turned on. I also, more importantly, have auto low latency mode turned on, which will basically have the Xbox tell the TV that, yo, we're going into game mode whenever I turn on my Xbox, which you want. I have variable refresh rate turned on, which basically means that my refresh rate, as long as your TV or monitor is capable of this, if it can't reach 120 Hertz in the moment, it'll bring it down to 110 Hertz, 110, 100 Hertz. That way it prevents some pretty nasty screen tearing. From there, I have allow 4K turned on, and I do not game with HDR on just for consumer reasons, content reasons. So if you want HDR, that's totally up to you, but most people suggest leaving that off for competitive FPS gaming. And that wraps up the most in-depth settings guide for console on Black Ops 6. If you guys appreciate the amount of effort that I put into this, if you made any changes to your settings, do me a favor, drop a like on the way out, and make sure you are subscribed with notifications on so you can find out about all things Black Ops 6, so that way you know the best strats, the best tips, and the best ways to outplay your opponents in both Black Ops 6 and Warzone. Huge shout out again to DeleteMe for sponsoring today's video. If you want to check them out, they're linked down in the pinned comment and the description. And if you want to check me out live, I will be streaming over on Twitch tonight. Thanks again for all the support on the recent videos, and I will see you all on the next one. Peace.